What does that even mean?
The verkramptes were the more conservative ones.
Okay.
And the verlegtes were the more enlightened ones, so to speak.
Who understand
who apparently understood.
Yeah. But the landscape is changing.
Yeah.
We have to try.
Yeah, so you would get support from the verlegtes as opposed from the verkramptes.
Okay.
But all these formations existed within parliament. Plus with other political formations.
Yes.
As like your...
De Klerk died without apologizing. He said he wanted to go to the family in Buipato to go and apologize. But he wasn't apologizing that it's his people who killed them. He was sympathetic because it's South African families who lost people in Buipato. He wanted to go there, but he says the apartheid police was not involved there.
You know,
and he said it went to court, it was proven that it was, that's De Klerk. De Klerk says it was IFP.
Now,
I want to understand this part because it's a very difficult part in our history. What actually happened?
It is that in the ANC, the Communist Party, the South African Indian Congress, these people have the mandate of their constituencies. But when where did you get your mandate? And you couldn't prove that you had a mandate to negotiate. And then he said, okay, fine. Very simple. We'll hold a referendum. But this referendum is going to be a referendum of white people. People have to decide whether they say yes to negotiations or no. And he said, but you must remember, if you say no, you are saying yes to continued sanctions against South Africa. Okay? And this country and go and talk to the ANC in Lusaka. Né? Other formations of what people want to go and speak to the ANC in Lusaka. And when they came back, they all had this in their mind, that what we thought that the ANC is not what we found in these people. These people are not as portrayed by the government. That's why now you started seeing people like Frederick van Zyslabert emerging.
Sure.
Because they no longer could not buy the story.
Yeah.
I'm saying, here's a question.
Sure.
$1 million question.
Yes.
What was the fight all about?
I honestly do not know.
So when you try and get answers this side,
yes,
the answers must respond to that question. Even on the other side, they must respond to that question.
Yes.
You realize, in essence, there was no reason whatsoever for us to fight.
This is why I'm saying someone made us fight, because it doesn't make sense. Let me give an example. You know, I read. I'll show the Zuma book here, and a lot of narrative comes from that. Among other things is ra le gore o ile gape ge re tsamaya re rile re tlo gopela di lesson ka CODESA. So ba bitsa CODESA 1 and 2 ne rola. There was a CODESA dance. People used to dance ka CODESA, and the elders will tell us, or you are playing with something very, very, very serious, and we do not know what they meant at the time. So we are the adults now who have to tell kids what is CODESA. And the difficulty, I think most of you will agree, the difficulty is we need to teach them about CODESA, but later now, we actually don't know about CODESA. Even if we read, I mean, we find it very difficult to understand CODESA. CODESA 1 and 2. I just want to give you space without channeling you into what is it that you want us to do. Tell us, according to you, what is CODESA? And you will start anywhere from how it was envisaged to where it is. What is CODESA?
Yeah, no, I think maybe let me start from the perspective of what in essence was the struggle for liberation of this country.
Okay.
And say that at all given points in time, it was envisaged that at some stage there's going to be a need for a convention of all parties concerned in South Africa to resolve the impasse that was there. Okay. Apartheid, South Africa, liberation, struggle, and so forth. And I think even at the time we had the Freedom Charter in 1956, the Freedom Charter sought nothing else but to bring about that convention. But of course the apartheid government was not ready for such. That's why the gathering that adopted the Freedom Charter, it's a pity today is the name of another political party, the Congress of the People. Because that's what it was, the Congress of the People.
And that is why from the Kliptown days,
yes,
ANC felt that COPE is stealing from them.
Yes, yes. But so that we don't get lost into that period, one thing clear is that after the unbanning of the liberation movement, in what is known as the Rubicon speech of F.W. de Klerk, it became clear that whatever settlement has to be reached has to be negotiated. And I think the ANC realized the importance of those negotiations. And it was in 1991 that the ANC called a meeting of no less than 92 other political formations into what was known as the Patriotic Front. These were political formations that would easily agree with the ANC on the approach to a political settlement in the country. And it was from that gathering that the whole question of
Continue
the
speaking. All right, yeah.
Convention of Democratic
South Africa
was muted. And key and paramount were two things. The type of South Africa envisaged in the form of the type of government that has to be put in place. And then secondly, the constitution that has to govern the structure. And this was the basis. So when the National Party was approached on that type of settlement. It became clear from the parties that participated in the patriotic front that you cannot have the National Party being the one that is driving the process or even overseeing the transition.
Hold it there. I want us to talk about some elements in the patriotic front because it's going to be important, Kopeli.
Yeah.
So the ANC was leading the patriotic front.
Yes.
And parties inside were mostly aligned to what the ANC wanted. Was Inkatha Freedom Party in the Patriotic Alliance at that time?
Inkatha Party was not. And I'll explain to you.
Can you explain it later? Continue with your line of thought.
Yeah. What was clear was that the ANC understood the art of negotiations. That
yes, you can speak.
In negotiations, you don't want to have too many parties on the other side of the table.
Yeah.
You rather have many people on your side of the table. Mm-hmm. And that's how the ANC approached the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And you have to look at who do you define as a political strategic opponent. Because not all contradictions are antagonistic. Some people might not agree with you, but not because they are your enemies or opponents, but simply because they don't see things the way you see them. And the ANC was quite aware and awake to that, and that's how it approached the issue of the patriotic front. And from there, it became clear that those who were not with the ANC were by definition then therefore with the National Party.
Yes, sir.
And then going into CODESA 1, it became clear as to who the ANC was going to negotiate with. Okay? And it was right at that stage, at the beginning of CODESA 1, in 1991, in December, that the IFP withdrew.
So they withdrew from who? From both negotiations?
From the negotiations, they just withdrew.
Do you know the reason?
They had two reasons. One of the reasons was that they wanted the direct representation of the King of Zulus, King Zwelithini, in the negotiations.
Explain it.
They wanted the King of Zulus to have a delegation negotiating on behalf of the Zulu Kingdom. Right? The second reason was that they wanted the government of KwaZulu to have a direct delegation negotiating on behalf of the government of KwaZulu, over and above the delegation of Inkatha Freedom Party. In other words, they were trying to multiply themselves. And when they could not get that one going, they withdrew. Okay? The other political formation that withdrew, of course, was the PAC. The
PAC withdrew within CODESA 1?
CODESA 1.
Okay.
And
before it collapsed? Because I need to understand, because there was a period where they need to go and rally each other until they came back to CODESA too. So when did PAC resign?
Right at the beginning.
Okay. Before it collapsed, before CODESA one
Before
collapsed.
it even started.
Okay, sharp.
Their view was that negotiations for a political settlement in South Africa must take place outside South Africa, overseen by probably a body such as the United Nations or the Organization of African Unity. So when they could not get that, they said, we are not going to participate. And the third category was the category of what I would term the extremists, if you like. You know.
The extremists on the right or on the left?
On both sides.
On both sides, okay.
Because you had Conservative Party feeling it was not going to form part of the negotiations. You had AZAPO feeling they were not going to be part of the negotiations.
On the extreme left?
Yeah, extreme left, extreme right. Now, so when the negotiations started, they started at a point where now there had to be points that the negotiating parties had to agree on. One was that they had to agree on a management structure, a structure that was going to manage the whole process. And to that end, it was agreed that each party will send 2 members and 2 advisors. All right?
One party sends
2 members and 2 advisors.
2 advisors.
And then from there, no, the other way around.
Okay.
The first one was the working committee. The working committee was 2 members, 2 advisors.
So this working committee was the one that is supposed to come and plan how are we going to compose this CODESA. Exactly
how everything is going to run and what are the issues that are going to be discussed. Now, the issues, key was 1, the reconstruction or restructuring of the SABC. Because the ANC felt you could not get into negotiations and continue with political life with the SABC structured as it were. Because SABC was an instrument used by the apartheid government to drive, among other things, its political propaganda. So you need to change that. The NP on the other side felt the ANC must disband Umkhonto Yesizwe. Suspend the armed struggle, disband Umkhonto Yesizwe, and actually surrender the weapons to the armed forces of the then government. And of course, it became clear that on this one they want to win. But at the same time, de Klerk had another problem. And the problem was that NP parliamentarians were not convinced that he was taking the correct route.
Hold it there. The referendum he did not do an internal party referendum. He did outside.
We're going there.
With the public. Okay.
We're going there.
All right.
When he could not get the full support of NP parliamentarians in parliament, it cost him to go to parliament and announce in parliament that to prove his support, he was going to have a referendum. And this was a referendum which was going to be run amongst white members of the population.
I want us, so I'm not lost.
Yeah.
So he talks to his parliamentarians. He doesn't get buy-in. Doesn't he go to the party before he goes to parliament? So, and this parliament is the one where Helen Suzmans are sitting, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So everybody's sitting there.
Okay.
No? And remember the other problem that he had in his own political party, the National Party. If you want, the National Party had two factions. The Verlegtes and the Verkramtes.
What does that even mean?
The Verkramtes were the more conservative ones.
Okay.
And the Verlegtes were the more lightened ones, so to speak.
Who understand
who apparently understood.
Yeah. That the landscape is changing.
Yeah.
We have to try.
Yeah, so you would get support from the Verlegtes as opposed from the Verkramtes.
Okay.
But all these formations existed within parliament. Plus with other political formations,
yes,
as like your Democratic Party then, Yabo Helen Suzman, and your Conservative Party.
Yes.
No? Far right. So he then said, no, to demonstrate that I'm on the right path, because these ones were asking the same question that we're asking. Where did you get the mandate to negotiate? Because surely the people we are negotiating with have the mandate of their own constituencies, meaning the ANC, the Communist Party, the South African Indian Congress. These people have the mandate of their constituencies. But where did you get your mandate? And he couldn't prove that he had a mandate to negotiate. And then he said, okay, fine. Very simple. We'll hold the referendum. But this referendum is going to be a referendum of white people. People have to decide whether they say yes to negotiations or no. And he said, but you must remember, if you say no, you are saying yes to continued sanctions against South Africa. Okay? And for that reason, many white people voted for yes. And he won that referendum. And that's how then he went to the negotiation table.
58.7, that's 69%.
Yeah.
And he was hoping for maybe around 51, 50 point.
Yes.
Yeah, and he won it by a
landslide. Remember, what actually brought the National Party to the negotiation table? What actually brought de Klerk to the unbanning of the liberation movement? You would remember that the unbanning came immediately after the collapse of the Soviet Union.
The Berlin.
and the Belino.
Yes.
Which would have said to you that the National Party was at its strongest and the liberation movement at its weakest, because its support had just almost on a daily basis vanished. Now, what is it that compelled de Klerk to unban the liberation movement? And the answer is found in what started in 1985. When now the thrust of the liberation war changed, where now through a number of operations, you name them, Church Street bombing, you know, all those ones. Right? Civilians started dying. You would know that the death of one civilian is equal to death of 1,000 soldiers.
Ish.
Because the family of the civilian who dies in such an operation want more answers, as opposed to if that deceased was a soldier. It will be in line of duty. But this is a civilian, is an innocent person, is waiting for a bus at the bus stop, and then a bomb explodes and he or she dies. So war is no longer in the street, but it's in the families of these people who lost their loved ones. And business started having a problem because now sanctions were hitting hard in their pockets. And they could no longer continue supporting this government that was bringing them so much loss. For instance, if you were to look closely at the economy of South Africa, the highest economic boom was in 1976 because of the price of gold. No? So when they started losing that comfort zone, they started having delegations that would leave this country and go and talk to the ANC in Lusaka. No? Other formations of what people want to go and speak to the ANC in Lusaka. And when they came back, they all had this in their mind, that what we thought that the ANC is not what we found in these people. These people are not as portrayed by the government. That's why now you started seeing people like Frederick van Zyslabert emerging.
Sure.
Because they no longer could not buy the story that they were always told of about the ANC.
So we have paused at CODESA 1, right?
Yes.
At CODESA 1, what was assembled there, and
Yes.
with PAC reluctance.
Yeah.
We are now back at the negotiations when Frederick van Zyslabert organized, let's say, the intelligentsia of white people. I mean, he took academics, he took business, he took political people to say, let's go and talk to those people. And amongst other places he went was in Harare, because they met them outside the country, and to convince them to start talks. So you would say the ANC has always had the advantage of seen as the face and the leaders of the struggle.
Because of the remember how the struggle was waged. The 4 pillars of struggle, which the ANC learned from Vietnam through a delegation which went there in 1978. Armed struggle, mass mobilization, underground structures as international solidarity. So each of these pillars, the ANC made sure that it accentuates, it rises sharply through those pillars. So it had a lot of international solidarity.
Yes.
So the National Party government realized, hey man, we can no longer claim to have any friends outside the UK and probably maybe Netherlands, though I'm not really sure of Netherlands. Almost everybody in the world is supporting these people. The Scandinavian countries, the Balkan states, they all supported the ANC. So the National Party realized that it's no longer a question of they are being supported by the Soviet Union. They are supported all over. So, and when those delegates that went outside came back, they were able to say to the apartheid government, hey, Chief, that's why you had the formation of the predecessor to what ultimately became DA. Many people always miss it. They think the transition was from the
National Party?
What is this thing? Slabet. Democratic Party.
Yes.
And then straight to DA.
Okay, from National Party, it merged into something before it became DA, right? There were 3 parties. There were 2. There was a party between National Party and DA.
Yeah.
Was it not DP?
No, DP. DP always was
Existed.
there.
Okay.
It was there.
Yeah.
DP actually graduated from the United Party, which was an opposition party to the National Party. Okay. An opposition party of mainly liberal white people.
Okay.
No? And in the ultimate end, I'm not even sure to call it a measure between the National Party and the DP that formed the DA.
Yeah.
But there was a...
It was left with Martinus Garvey, right? When National Party was at its dying stages.
Yeah, Martinus van Schalkwyk, remember, did not even go to the DA.
Yes, so he was the last leader of National Party.
Of National Party.
Yes, okay.
Ne? But there was a party, Yabo Veinan.
Viljoen.
Yes. It was something democratic movement.
Okay.
And this is the party that actually evolved into the DA. Ne?
Okay.
With both Martinez van Schalkwyk not associating themselves. Even when at the beginning they tried to form part of that, they realized we are not fitting here.
Yeah.
And what happened? They moved to the ANC.
Yeah. So I don't want us to get lost with our audience. So let's do this. So at around those times that the Balkan states started favoring the narrative, Thabo Mbeki were in Sussex at the time and pushing the struggle, discussing with Mikhail Gorbachev, sitting in there, they will go to USA, they will do it. It was which arm was it? The fourth one or the third one of those pillars. And they started those cultural events that started with Free Mandela concerts. So you reckon all those pressures and the sanctions, of course, as you named those 4 pillars, are what is the pressure that culminated into them realizing that, guys, Van Zyl Slabbert is right. Dr. Van Zyl Slabbert is right. Let's sit down with these people and negotiate.
Yeah, remember the 4 pillars were not applied one after the other.
Yeah.
They were applied
concurrently.
At the same time.
Yes.
When we are busy talking this side, getting international solidarity, bombs are exploding inside the country.
Yes.
People are getting out in the streets, toy.
Yeah.
And there's a strong presence of rudimentary organizational structures underground. So you actually now had the ANC operating from within the country. You know? You had it operating from within the country. All these things were happening at the same time. So pressure was applied at the maximum level. You know?
One thing I wanted to ask, I want you to get back to CODESA and finish. Current day, the word terrorist is defined as a swear word, something that is very negative. And during that time, being called a communist was almost similar to that. Even parties who were, the SACP is the only communist party in South Africa. The ANC and other freedom fighters, they were called communist. Do you know why? Is it part of the propaganda? Why was it? Just unpack that part for me.
It was for the fear of the influence of the Soviet Union on politics of the oppressed majority in South Africa.
Oh.
Because Soviet Union was seen as a communist country.
As a USSR, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So the fear that USSR instilled in the hearts of the National Party led to anyone that is opposing them being labeled a communist.
And being a negative thing.
Yes. Even non-communists.
They were called communists.
Yeah, even priests.
Yes.
Yes. They were called communists.
Yeah.
Related to that was that the National Party wanted to portray itself as a Christian movement. Now, and communism was portrayed as something anti-Christian.
As atheists. Yes.
Not even atheist, just anti-Christian.
Yeah.
So, if you tell someone a communist, that person would not be easily acceptable to ardent Christians.
Yes, no, I understand.
So it was important for the National Party to keep that narrative going. But linked with that was that because of the number of explosions that were going all over the country, and they associated that not with freedom fighters but with terrorists, people who bring terror into the hearts of the ordinary people.
Yes.
So you'd be called a terrorist or a communist or both. So that narrative was something that had to be dealt with. So even when Dr. Van Zyl Slabbert went outside the country, he thought he was going to meet those two devils.
Yeah.
Terrorists and communists. And he was shocked when he met human beings like him. People who could sit down with him and talk with him and probably even have coffee or tea with him. And when he came back, he said, no. This thing is nonsense. There's nothing such as this thing. These people are sane. They're just like us. Probably they love their country more than we do, and that's why they are fighting for the liberation of their country. And let us give them space, you know? And that's what led to the negotiations, CODESA.
Yes. Before that.
Yeah.
I agree we are painting the picture as to what pressures they received in those negotiations. Tell me, those Krutiskir minutes, those Pretoria minutes where people had to sit down and negotiate how this thing, what were they negotiating? Because you spoke about the working committees.
Yes.
Yeah, those ones, because remember they negotiated outside the country.
Yes.
Mandela was released, they came back and all the freedom fighters came back. There were still negotiations before CODESA. There were lots and lots of meetings. What were they negotiating there?
No. You would make a very huge mistake if you say before.
Okay.
Né? This is part and parcel of the negotiations.
Okay. Because I want you to understand, in this context, when we say negotiation, we're talking about the formalized CODESA sitting.
Yeah.
But there were many meetings
yes.
outside CODESA, planning into CODESA.
What was the sitting all about?
The CODESA.
Yes. What was it going to consider?
This is why we are seated here, like I told you.
Yeah.
I do not know.
Yes.
That's why I need to understand all other things.
And what are the what were the key elements that were to be negotiated? Né? One, right at the very beginning, among other things, parties had to agree on what I will call, and this I'm doing this deliberately.
Yes.
Né? Because many people think racial parity is national question. No. National question is about sovereignty, loyalty, patriotism, and owing allegiance to the national symbols. Né? So these were the things that to say, if we say South Africa, what form and shape would be that South Africa? Né? The whole thing around diversity of languages and so forth, all those things were negotiated by the working committees.
Okay.
Né? All things around how people are going to respond when you say, let's sing the national anthem. Those things were negotiated at
those working committees.
At those working committees, including how are you going to resolve the impasse when you negotiate what form of a constitution has to be written.
I think that's what collapsed CODESA 1.
Exactly. And it's very interesting that the National Party suggested a threshold of 70%, né, to resolve issues of constitutionality and 75% to resolve on the Bill of Rights. Né? And the ANC initially came with 60, né, on everything. And when this thing collapsed, they went back to their Patriotic Front to go negotiate with the Patriotic Front. And they came back with 75%. There's a story behind that.
Please tell.
Yeah? There's a story behind that. That happened at the time when the negotiating team of the ANC changed.
Spill them beans.
Remember who was leading the negotiations?
I don't know.
It was Thabo Mbeki.
Okay.
And then Thabo Mbeki was changed to be replaced by Cyril Ramaphosa.
Esa.
No?
Yeah. And with that changed, who enjoyed the change?
I don't understand how you say enjoy it, but
So who enjoyed the change? Let me qualify my question. Did the opposition enjoy the change?
maybe in the sense that the change took the negotiations a step.
It advanced the negotiations.
It advanced the negotiations.
Hold it there.
Yeah.
So there were radicals within what I would call the ANC camp.
Yeah.
Of Hannes and the others.
Yes.
Who were not happy, and for many reasons.
Yes.
Did they enjoy the change?
No, not really. Remember, one of the fundamental differences within the ranks of the ANC was the issue of the suspension of the armed struggle. It has never been a unanimous decision within the ANC.
Yes.
In fact, if you want, there are those people who feel they were bulldozed into that decision. Because, among other things, when the decision was finally taken, Chris Hani was in Transkei. He was not even part of the meeting that took that decision.
Ish.
When Beg was removed as a leader of the negotiations, he was not even inside the country. He was not in that NEC that took a decision to remove him. You see? So, but in the ultimate end, those things happened. Okay? And when those things happened, there was a declaration that had to be formed by the parties involved. Signed by the parties involved in the negotiations. And it will be very, very interesting to realize who were the parties that signed that declaration formal statement. They would include your former homeland parties, Ximoko, Dikwankwetla, you know,
Freedom Party.
Yes.
Yes.
No? It will include those.
Hold it there. It's an important aspect, and you know, the reason we postponed this CODESA talk is because, to be honest, in itself it is about 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And apologies, the reason we keep interrupting, because we might need to shoot this again.
Yeah.
Here's the problem that people always have problems with, and including myself. There are people who constantly say, let apartheid come back. We were happy during apartheid because this is nonsense we did not like. And people are saying Mangope was better because Mangope did this. People who were killed in Bisho, there are some who wanted blah, 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 blah. So I want you to understand that we who were not wise enough to read political dynamics at the time, we only are fed with second-hand stories, and some of these second-hand stories are with evidence, of course. Mangope was one of the homelands. The Bantustans would include, of course, the KwaZulu-Natal, who were supporting apartheid South Africa government. And they were used as negotiation power because they knew they were in their camp. They received, these leaders of the Bantustans, the homelands, they received certain privileges from apartheid South African government, and they were shielded from a lot of things. Is that narrative consistent with what was happening in reality?
Can I, and I want us to use this thing, and I usually say, let us learn from what we have in our hands to make matters very simple.
Sure.
And I'm going to use a debit card. A debit card.
Sure.
The one that you put in an ATM and draw money.
Yes.
If you start withdrawing more money than you have,
Going to overdraft.
if you are lucky,
Yeah.
you have an overdraft.
Yes.
But the most common message you'll get is insufficient funds.
Yes.
Okay? That is, you have used up more than what we have in the
Yes.
card.
Yes.
And I want us to take that card and give it a new name and call it service delivery. Okay? If you have that card, you are staying alone. You can stretch that card when you buy groceries. But immediately the number of the people staying in the house changes. You can't stretch it any further than you can.
Yes.
And this is what happened with Homelands. The service delivery to Buputatswana was to a few people in Buputatswana with the financial muscle and financial backing of the National Party. The National Party government did not deliver services to all the people of South Africa. It delivered to a few people. If you say it was better, when I know that not all the streets in Atteridgeville were tarred, and they were only tarred, all of them were only tarred after 2011. Before 2011, we had streets in Atteridgeville which did not have a tar.
Malobanyana.
Yes,
I had people speaking about that.
yes. So, the government of today is expected to tar all the streets. But does the kitty increase?
No.
Not necessarily. I saw the Reserve Bank, not the Reserve Bank, the Treasury celebrating how much tax they've collected.
2.1?
More than 10 billion more than what they expected. But I can tell you, even with that money, the money collected is still not enough to deliver all the needed services. There's a new crisis coming. There's a new crisis coming, and it's coming because of the fact that the problems are multifaceted.
Don't scare us about those crises coming. Let's go back to CODESA.
No, now,
Let's get back to CODESA.
So
we're speaking about the influence of the homelands
yes,
as a backup system for the National Party negotiators. Yes.
Yes. You can never argue with an empty stomach. Fill someone's stomach and he'll always follow you. There's a story that is said about Stalin. That he once took a chicken and plucked off its wings while it was still alive and put it down and started throwing grain and moving. And the chicken followed him. Forgetting the trauma it went through when he plucked the feathers.
Ish.
Now, that's exactly what is happening with people who think that apartheid was better. It can't have been better. When people chose to jump over bridges and go and injure themselves just because he did not have a reference book, or the pass that he had was short of one stamp, or a signature. A signature. Because there was a page which every month had to be signed by your employer. If you did not have that signature, you are going to spend 2 years in the prison currently called Transvaal prison, which is just next to Lodium, where this guy was incarcerated, Oscar Pistorius. There was an offense called Loferskap. You'll go for 2 years for not working, for not being employed. And to prove that you are employed, you had to have this signature in your top boss. Now, how can that have been better than it is today?
Yes.
I say no. I say no. Go to the people who suffered under Mangwape. Go to them. And I always tell the story of the area commonly known as Hammanskraal. And you hear people from Hammanskraal say, I'm in town, I'm in town. But what is Hammanskraal? That's where the kraal of Hamman Rens was. And this kraal was used to store cattle taken from the African people around. And it was put in that kraal because it was near a railway line. The cattle would be put on the train and it would be gone. The owners would have lost their cattle. Hamman's kraal, Hamman's kraal, Hamman Rens, who now a part of Hammanskraal is named after, is called Rens Town. And these are things that we are now celebrating. Apartheid formations, were they better?
Of course not.
Not.
Of course not. I mean, the debate that it's a crime against humanity, it's even futile to even start.
Yeah.
That's why I don't want to go there, because it reminds me how much Zille is so heartless when I come to that. So, in the negotiations,
Yeah.
The Patriotic Front had all these 4 pillars. They put pressure because of the sanctions,
Yes.
and they had the people,
Yes.
and apartheid government had these Bantustan leaders to help them, of course, with the SABC to propagate this propaganda. And then CODESA 1 collapses, and Patriotic Front says our people are going to go to the streets.
Yes.
Carnage, loss of life.
Yeah.
Shaville Wuipatong and Bisho, they start blaming FW de Klerk for arming vigilante groups. At that time, vigilante group, they meant IFP.
Yeah.
And that man died without apologizing, because he says he is not the one who sent people.
You mean who?
De Klerk.
Yeah.
Died without apologizing. He said he wanted to go to the family in Wuipatong to go and apologize. But he wasn't apologizing that it's his people who killed them. He was sympathetic because it's South African families who lost people in Wuipatong. He wanted to go there, but he says the apartheid police was not involved there.
You know,
and he said it went to court, it was proven that it was, that's declared. Declared says it was IFP.
now,
I want to understand this part, because it's a very difficult part in our history. What actually happened?
it is that it's very painful.
Very.
I never thought after so many years I can feel the way I feel now after you asked that question.
Ish. Excuse.
No? I never, really. I'm
Yes.
being honest with you. Because I went through this thing.
Ish.
No?
Yeah.
In more ways than one. When I went to university in 1980, On the 24th of May in 1980, the president of the SRC then, the late Comrade Reggie Gadebe, was attacked by Inkatha MPs on his graduation day on campus. Some school kids were beaten up, others were arrested. But the late Herman Mweketi, my friend, and I just learned recently that another one, Euclid Maji, passed away too. And I could not understand this thing. This is 1980. I could not understand this thing because in 1978, when Sobukwe was buried, where? In Grafreinet.
Yes.
When Sobukwe was buried in Grafreinet, there's a group of people who wanted to attack Mangosuthu Buthelezi and probably kill him. He was saved by Bishop Tutu. And at that stage, I was so angry at these people for attacking Mangosuthu Buthelezi, who was then Gaja Buthelezi. Because in my naivety as it were then, as a student, a high school student, I thought Gaja Buthelezi was one of the leaders that was pushing the liberation struggle. So I could not understand why these people wanted to attack him. But in 1980, I wish they had succeeded.
Ish.
And then 3 years thereafter, the 29th of October, 1983, the campus was invaded by Amabuto of Inkatha. 5 students lost their lives on that day. And I survived because one of those who lost his life
Came to warn you.
came to warn me off.
Comrade Maribat.
Maribat. So, when you talk about the behavior ya Inkatha, I can even smell it. Because when I came back from reading in the morning, wee hours of the 29th of October, this Amabuto were lining up the passage leading to my room. And because I did not even think of any imminent danger, I went through them. And they were singing. And I got into my room. So I know the smell of death meted by these people. But I'm saying they could not have succeeded in doing the things that they did if it was not through the assistance of the National Party government. Bo Philip Hoele, Bo Mbuyane, this warlord that was in KZN, many people, the warlord in Midlands and Ntombela and so forth. Those people were armed by the National Party government. And those groups were established to fight the liberation war, to fight those who are waging the liberation war, not to bring about liberation. They were established to suppress that. That's how now the killings on trains, the killings in the townships, you go to Katlego, you go everywhere. Zongezizwe, all the places. Now, hence the Wipato massacre and the death of Chris Hani delivered the date for the elections. You must remember, these are the only times when Mandela, who was not in government nowhere, was allowed to address the nation on national television.
Hold it there before we get to Mandela. There's a narrative that says, and of which I'm a proponent of this narrative. You talk about the warlords, Nkabinde and stuff, and the armament, cash armament that they received and stuff, and the amount of people who were dying, even though it was in separate places like in Gauteng and stuff. People all over South Africa use the phrase that Inkatha is coming. You would have graffitis written that blah, blah, blah. Were we in civil war?
I wouldn't say it was a civil war, but we were just on the brink of a civil war. Why I don't call it a civil war is that it was not an open, fair war.
Yeah.
You wouldn't say those ones are this side, these are the ones are this side.
So skirmishes could cause a war.
Yes.
So those were just initial skirmishes that were
Yes,
felt.
yes. But they were so exaggerated that a full-blown civil war was not very far. Ne? The minute there started being no-go areas, where you'd know, I can't go there.
Yeah.
If I go there, I'm more than 100% sure that I won't come out of that place alive. And what actually became of hostels, I remember in 1993, we had an ANC office in town, Fanercom building, on the 5th floor. And we received word that the IFP will be coming into Pretoria. And for some reason, I said I'm not going to lock the offices. Well, I had the advantage of two comrades who were acting as bodyguards. They're both late now, Fanyana Matrowe and Maurice Masilela from Winterveld. And the only thing we had officially was pump action guns. Ne?
Yes.
But there was no one. Everybody was gone. And when the IFP came, because they did come, they simply marched to Union Building and came back. It was after the incident,
Shell
House.
Shell House, man. Shell House.
Ne? Now, so you would understand that the inability of opposing forces to win this thing on the negotiation table warranted to take the war somewhere. And it was to take the war to the streets. And remember what I said earlier. The death of one civilian is equal to the death of 1,000 soldiers. So if my brother dies in the streets defending the ANC, where do I need answers to come from? From the ANC. So that might lead to the ANC being unpopular in the family. And my family is a big family. So these things will dwindle the support of the ANC down.
Nice.
And this is primarily the reason. There was nothing that you can tell me that the fight between the IFP, as it were, and the ANC was over this. No. Why was there a fight?
So I've always said, I've never said with anyone who understands this story from the other side. And I feel it's high time that we speak to any IFP member, a senior AFP member, who can come and explain this thing from their side. Because, you know, when people say South Africa, we are a miracle, some people may not understand how the battle lines were. It was just blood, it was carnage. The fact that we are sitting and we are speaking about this openly, it just shows you that indeed we are a miracle, because we survived civil war, and other people, of course, are saying we survived that because by SACP standards, they say it was a colonization of a special type, because the white did not leave after independence. They stayed, and that helped us from this civil war that plagued other African countries. But I want us to do this. We are going to pack this. I believe I need to speak to someone, or close this chapter if we need to close. But what I don't want is, I don't want to close this chapter as if I do not want to let people from the IFP or people who understand struggle from their side to give their side of the story. But for now, I want to close it understanding that we don't understand what was the rationale of IFP fighting other African people, because that is very difficult to understand. So I want us to go back to CODESA.
Yeah. But before we do that,
yes,
I'm saying here's a question.
Sure.
$1 million question.
Yes.
What was the fight all about?
I honestly do not know.
So when you try and get answers this side,
yes,
the answers must respond to that question. Even on the other side, they must respond to that question.
yes,
You realize, in essence, there was no reason whatsoever for us to fight.
this is why I'm saying someone made us fight, because it doesn't make sense. Let me give an example. You know, I read I'll show the Zuma book here, and a lot of narrative comes from that. Among other things is, and it was, you know, it's surprising that ANC was even negotiating that at CODESA to say, can we fence Zulu hostels so we will not have problems, and whenever there are marches, people, the Nomkiris and the spears, people must not carry their traditional weapons. Yeah. And you know, it surprises me, because you know, if that is a part of negotiations, who was saying it's very difficult. That's why I'm saying we are a miracle, because I'm being honest with you. I do not understand, and sometimes my not understanding is some of the things that I say. Maybe let's just close the chapter knowing that we don't understand, unless someone from the other side can come and explain. Because in the book, and I'll show the page here, there's a part where they say they are Mangosuthu says this fighting for their rights to march with their traditional weapons. And you understand, even in CODESA, they were negotiating that they must not carry dangerous weapons when marching. And it doesn't make sense that they were asking white government that IFP must not carry that. But like I say, if I'm lucky, we'll get someone who will ask that question, so we understand. Maybe we'll put this to bed, and it's unfortunate the old man is gone, but let's just leave it at that. Let's get back to CODESA.
Now, let's look at the founding statement. at CODESA of what type of South Africa was being negotiated. The type of South Africa that was being negotiated is the same type of South Africa you find in the strategic objective of the National Democratic Revolution. The establishment of a non-sexist, non-racial, democratic, united, and prosperous South Africa. These are the issues that were being negotiated. How are you going to manage the transfer of power from homelands, for instance? Ne? That's why when you look on the other side of the table, except for 2 and later 3 TBVC states.
What were those?
One was Transkei. And you know why? Because Holomisa had already staged a coup in Transkei. So it was easy for Holomisa to come on the side of the ANC with Transkei. Gabriel Ramuswana had staged a coup against Mpepu in Venda. So it was easy for Gabriel Ramuswana to come on the other side of the ANC. But you had something different in Ciskei. Though Opa Gozo had staged a coup against Sebe, he moved even much closer to the National Party government.
That's what gave us Bishu.
Yes. Then you had these other ones, Dikwankwetla and what have you, moving on the other side. And they had their own problems. They carry their own...
So the oldest, like your typical Ximoko, has always been, from start to finish, has always been opposition of the Patriotic Front.
Ximoko?
Ximoko Sharashaka.
No, Ximoko was always part of the Patriotic Front.
Oh, okay.
Ximoko, Dikwankwetla.
Yeah.
Ne? They were all part of the...
But they contested 94 separately, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes. Well,
like many others.
Interest started building up when it comes. That's why I say they were not necessarily antagonistic.
Yeah, okay. No,
but they were opponents.
Yes.
Ne? Look at what happened in Leboa, for instance. When the ANC in good faith wanted to have Ramodike on its list, they realized the opposition that people of Leboa had against that name on the list, the ANC. He was removed exactly 2 weeks before elections on the list, the ANC.
So Ramodike took over CN Patudi?
Took after Patudi.
Took after Patudi, then Ramodike.
Yes.
But because Ramodike was tainted with the homelands, should I say, atrocities, and he was not a darling during transition.
In his homeland?
Yes.
The ANC was prepared to have him on its list.
Yeah.
But it was the people of Leboa who said, you can't have that man on the list if you want us to vote for you.
Ish.
The ANC had to remove him with only 2 weeks before elections. They removed him from that. No, he was just on the list. He was not necessarily the preferred candidate for the premier candidate. No. Okay. He was just on the list. Like you had Inos Mabuza.
Okay.
Of I think Inyanda in Mpumalanga. And then you had Mahlangu, here, James, no?
Okay.
With Intando Yesizwe, I think that was the name of the organization in what was then KwaNdebele. After taking over from George, what was George's surname? But I just forgot his name. No?
Okay, now we are closing.
Yeah.
People want to know. And then CODESA 2 comes back.
Yes.
And people say CODESA 2 didn't succeed because they say CODESA 2, I don't know, it also collapsed.
It collapsed.
What were the things that collapsed? Or want to talk about CODESA 2?
Yes.
What collapsed CODESA 2?
No, what collapsed CODESA 2 in particular was what the National Party saw as the interim government. And the fact that National Party wanted a minority veto power.
Even.
Meaning that if they did not agree as a minority party, they would have to veto. Ne? And the ANC said, no, you can't get that. Ne? It's one man, one vote majority rules.
Yeah.
And this interim government should not last more than 18 months. And the National Party wanted this interim government to actually replace CODESA. Almost starting negotiations afresh. Okay? What was key there? What was key was the Constituent Assembly. Because it was the Constituent Assembly which was going to be tasked with drawing up of the new constitution of the country. Ne? And remember the threshold. Bill of Rights 75%, any other thing 70%. Now that threshold was so high. It was moving away from what is universally standard 66.6%. Ne? So it was just making it very difficult. Unwinnable.
That's why they had the power of these homelands to frustrate, to reduce the number from getting to.
Exactly.
And you know, the reason I kept saying it's a very confusing thing, even when, I mean, a lot of South Africans are not ignorant, because we do go and want to understand CODESA, but we come back without understanding anything. Let me give an example. You read the Bill of Rights, even if you read it now, you would ask yourself, I mean, this includes everyone. I mean, what was it even? Why was there even a fuss about the Bill of Rights? I mean, those rights are universal human rights.
Yeah.
I mean, you would not even think this was something that was supposed to be negotiated. And number two, and this is what confuses me. So the whites wanted to amend the constitution, then go to elections. And the political front led by the ANC wanted the negotiations to say, we are going to elections, and after election, then we withdraw the constitution. And my understanding was that transition, it produced a compromise. And this compromise is what they ended up with, this transitional or temporary, whatever you
Government of National Unity.
Government of National Unity, where IFP and FDW came into office with that man. Well, I thought that was a compromise.
It was.
And when we say, when we hear this narrative that says, we sold out, we sold ourselves out, Mandela sold out, ANC sold out at CODESA. What does it mean? What was expected, and what is it that we didn't get?
No, you see, here, I always ask a question. If you say Mandela sold out, I say, on which aspect? of governance did Mandela sell out? Because more often than not, people cry about not having economic power.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, I always ask this question.
Yeah.
Can you juxtapose that
Yes.
with the Freedom Charter?
I'm pressing because we are closing. I'm pressing.
Yeah.
Please try in 2 minutes. In 2 minutes, I'm pressurizing you just to close.
No,
Yes.
it's very simple.
Yes.
Read what the Freedom Charter says about land.
Yeah.
Read what the Freedom Charter says about the wealth of the country. And look at where the Freedom Charter referred to nationalization.
AZAPO and PAC has that thing.
Yes, well, PAC have got their own story of saying that it's not even our document. It's a document written by some communists in a smoke-filled room somewhere.
Yeah.
That's a debate for another day. I would argue they must tell us where the PAC was formed and who owned the place that the PAC was formed from. We've got a story to tell, but the story won't take us anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so isn't ZB Max is it ZB Max or
JB.
JB Max who wrote the template for the preamble in 1955 at Cape Town?
No. That's another story.
That's another story.
Let me tell you.
Yes.
For instance, each clause had different drafters, and there will be a lead person.
Okay.
The clause on education, the lead person was Skiam Patel.
What a beautiful brain.
You understand what I'm saying?
Beautiful brain, yeah.
Now, these things were aspirations of people collected from different people in the farms and so forth. So they had to be put together.
You know,
you can't bring pieces of paper written on the back of boxes of cigarettes and all those things.
Every time I come to speak to you, I always understand just how much we need time.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want us to end this without proper closing. I want you to close because we're losing power, we're losing everything. Load shedding is other thing. If close in 2 minutes.
No.
Why did they say they sold out? Just close it.
No.
And why is it wrong?
You know. I always say this. And I get into trouble every time I say this.
Yeah.
Show me any book that you won't find any person who disagrees with what is written in that book. None.
Even this podcast.
Everything.
Yes.
No? Even the Bible.
Yes.
So it is in the nature of people to sit back and listen, to sit back and read and find faults. Now, nothing on this earth is fault-free. And I wanted to say, always I say this. I say, if you understand contradictions, if you understand the first law of dialectical materialism, unity and struggle of opposites, that the fact that when you pick up your right foot to walk, it does not go with your right hand. It goes with your left foot. Otherwise, you will walk in an awkward way. So then you will understand the nature of life. That when people are beaten, they will tell you how wrong the person who beat them was. I always say to my nephews here, in the South African context, tell me of any discussion of soccer that can start and end without mentioning Mamelodi Sundowns. So our soccer is defined in terms of Mamelodi Sundowns. I'm not a fan.
Yes.
I'm a Moroka Swallows fan.
Sharp, in closing,
Yeah.
ANC did not sell at
No.
CODESA. Mandela did not sell out at CODESA.
No way.
CODESA was the best vehicle to bring South Africa from the brink of collapse to what we have now.
Yes.
But you do agree that South Africa could have been better.
Yes.
But it is not CODESA.
But if it didn't go that way,
Yes.
it could have been worse.
Thank you very much, Intando Mohlala. It's very difficult to close a chapter with you. Let's agree to come back on another one.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sure.